The Zynthari High Command had given humanity 2 hours to surrender unconditionally. 2 hours to dismantle their defenses, broadcast their capitulation across all channels, and prepare for occupation. Commander Velrax stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, all 6 of his eyes fixed on the holographic countdown hovering above the tactical display. 1 hour, 53 minutes remaining. He clicked his mandibles in satisfaction, a gesture his species reserved for moments of absolute certainty. "They're stalling," observed Sub-Commander Thera, her scales shimmering with what Velrax recognized as barely contained excitement. "No response to our ultimatum whatsoever." "Of course they're stalling," Velrax replied, his voice carrying that particular tone of condescension he'd perfected over 3 decades of military service. "It's what primitives do when they realize they've miscalculated. They hope for a miracle, perhaps some grand revelation that will save them at the last possible moment." He gestured toward the view screen, where Earth hung like a blue marble against the void, surrounded by the scattered remnants of humanity's orbital defense grid. The Zynthari fleet, 4,000 warships strong, representing the combined might of 17 conquered species, formed a perfect encirclement. Every tactical simulation run by their Dandri AI had concluded the same thing. Humanity had no options, no tricks, no hidden reserves. "Sir," called out Navigation Officer Kix from his station, "we're detecting increased radio chatter from the human homeworld. Multiple languages, multiple encryption protocols." Velrax's scales rippled with amusement. "Let them coordinate their surrender. It will make the occupation more orderly." He turned to his communications specialist, a nervous Krell named Borton, whose fur always seemed to be standing on end. "Have we received any formal response from the human governing body?" "Nothing official, sir." But Borton hesitated, his 3-fingered hands hovering over his console. "But what?" "There's been a single transmission. Text only. Very brief." Borton's translator struggled with the emotion in his voice. Was that confusion? Fear? It came from something called the United Earth Defense Coordinator, a human named Keiko Tanaka. "And?" Velrax demanded. "Patience thinning, she says. And I'm translating directly here, sir. Received. Will respond in due time. Please hold." Borton looked up from his console, his large eyes blinking rapidly. "That's it. That's the entire message." The bridge fell silent except for the ambient hum of ship systems and the soft chirping of monitoring equipment. Velvel felt a strange sensation ripple through his primary nervous cluster, not quite concern, but perhaps the distant cousin of unease. Thera broke the silence with a sound that could only be described as a laugh. "Please hold." As if we've called their customer service line. The arrogance of these creatures is almost admirable. Admirable. Velrax repeated, rolling the word around like a pebble in his mouth. "Yes, let's go with that. Admirable arrogance in the face of complete annihilation." He settled back into his command chair, which automatically adjusted to support his physiology. "What's the status of their military assets?" Tactical Officer Rendix, a hulking Gorath whose species had been among the first to fall Zynthari expansion, consulted his displays. "Minimal activity, Commander. Their remaining orbital platforms are powered down. The handful of warships they have left are holding position at various points around their moon. We're detecting power signatures consistent with skeleton crews only." "Skeleton crews," Velrax mused. "They've abandoned their defenses, probably evacuating their leadership to bunkers, preparing to hide like the cowards that—" "Sir." Borton's shout cut through the bridge like a plasma cutter. "New transmission. Audio this time. It's that same human. Tanaka." "Put it through," Velrax ordered, his mandibles clicking rapidly now, a sign of irritation his crew knew to respect. The voice that filled the bridge was female, calm, almost conversational. It spoke in perfect Zynthari without the usual hesitation or accent that plagued most translation systems. "Commander Velrax of the Zynthari High Command. This is Defense Coordinator Keiko Tanaka of Earth. I wanted to personally thank you for the 2-hour notice. That's actually quite generous by galactic standards, from what I understand. Very sporting of you." Thera's scales flushed a deep purple, The Zynthari equivalent of a raised eyebrow, Velrax remained motionless, waiting. Tanaka continued, her tone maintaining that same unsettling casualness. I've consulted with our various governmental bodies, military leaders, scientific advisors, and even a few philosophers. Just to be thorough, we've carefully considered your terms, run all the numbers, examined every possible outcome. Here it comes, whispered Thera. The begging, and we've reached a unanimous decision, Tanaka said. There was a pause, deliberate, Velrax thought, theatrical even. We decline. Velrax's mandibles stopped mid-click. Decline? Decline, Tanaka repeated, as if confirming an order at a restaurant. We will not be surrendering. Not unconditionally. Not conditionally. Not at all, really. We appreciate the offer, though. Truly. It must have taken quite a bit of effort to get 4,000 ships here. That's a lot of logistics. A lot of coordination. Impressive. Honestly. Rendix looked up from his console, his massive frame somehow managing to convey confusion. Is she mocking us? Furthermore, Tanaka continued, ignoring the question she couldn't hear. We'd like to extend a counteroffer. You have. Another pause. Let's see. About 1 hour and 42 minutes left on your original ultimatum. We'd like to give you the same courtesy. 1 hour and 42 minutes to withdraw your fleet beyond the orbit of Mars and signal your intent to negotiate a non-aggression pact. The bridge erupted in sounds, clicks, hisses, rumbles, and in Bortin's case, a high-pitched whine that his species made when confronted with something utterly nonsensical. Velrax raised one of his primary appendages, demanding silence. Ms. Tanaka, he said, his translator probably struggling to convey the mixture of amusement and contempt in his voice. Perhaps you haven't grasped the tactical situation. You are surrounded. Your defenses are shattered. Your fleet is scattered. You have no allies, no reinforcements, no hope. What exactly do you think gives you any position to make demands? Oh, I understand the tactical situation perfectly, Commander, Tanaka replied. In fact, I probably understand it better than you do. You see, you're looking at what's visible. Orbital platforms powered down but not destroyed, you'll note. Our ships holding position, not fleeing. Our military installations quiet but fully staffed. Semantics, Velrax spat. All of it amounts to the same thing, defeat. Does it, though? Tanaka's voice carried a smile now. Velrax could hear it, even through the translation. Let me ask you something, Commander. In all your intelligence gathering, in all your surveillance of our system, did you ever wonder why a species that only achieved faster-than-light travel 30 years ago managed to colonize 17 separate systems in that time? Did you question how we built a defensive grid that, while damaged, still required you to bring 17 conquered species worth of firepower to crack it? Thera leaned closer to Velrax, her voice dropping. She's trying to psych us out. Classic primitive intimidation tactics. Ignore it. But Velrax couldn't ignore it. Because now that this human had planted the question, it did seem odd, didn't it? Humanity's expansion had been unusually rapid. Their technology, while primitive compared to true galactic powers, had advanced at an almost exponential rate. What are you suggesting? Velrax asked, hating the hint of uncertainty that crept into his voice. I'm not suggesting anything, Tanaka said. I'm telling you, we're fast learners, Commander, very fast. And we've been paying attention to every species we've encountered, every technology we've been exposed to, every tactic we've observed. Your species? You're not the first to try to conquer us. You're just the first to mass enough ships to make it interesting. Rendix's console began chirping. Then Kix's. Then half the stations on the bridge lit up simultaneously with alerts. What is that? Velrax demanded, his combat-trained reflexes finally overriding his confusion. Report, multiple signatures appearing throughout the system, Rendix said, his voice tight with something that might have been fear. Dozens. No, hundreds. No. His voice trailed off. 17,406. A new human voice cut into the channel, male younger than Tanaka's, with an accent Velrax's translator identified as North American. That's how many ships we have. Well, that we had about 3 minutes ago. We've been building more while you've been talking. Impossible, Velrax breathed. There's no infrastructure, no shipyards, no— You're thinking too small, Commander, Tanaka interjected. Too conventionally. When you scanned our system, you looked for what you expected to see. Orbital shipyards, manufacturing facilities, resource processing stations, all the things your species and your conquered territories need to build a fleet. The tactical display updated, and Velrax felt his primary heart skip a beat. The human ships weren't appearing from hidden locations. They were materializing in place, assembled from components that had been disguised as asteroid mining operations, scientific research stations, commercial freight containers. Every piece of civilian infrastructure in the human system, it turned out, had been a Trojan horse. We learned manufacturing efficiency from the Krell, Tanaka continued, her voice now carrying an edge that cut through Velrax's growing panic. Defensive formations from the Gorath. Energy shielding from the Sylvan Compact. And you know what we learned from the Zynthari? Velrax couldn't speak, couldn't think. The tactical display showed human vessels forming up in perfect combat formations, surrounding his fleet in the same encirclement pattern he'd been so proud of mere minutes ago. We learned patience, Tanaka said softly. The value of letting an enemy commit fully before revealing your hand. You taught us that, actually. When you conquered the Threxian kingdoms, we studied every battle you've ever fought, Commander Velrax. Every tactic, every strategy, every mistake. Thura was shouting orders now, calling for battle stations, weapons charging, evasive maneuvers. But Velrax remained frozen, his eyes fixed on the countdown timer. 1 hour, 36 minutes. You still have time, Tanaka said. My offer stands. Withdraw beyond Mars orbit. We'll talk. We're not unreasonable, despite what you might think. We don't want to fight if we don't have to. And if we refuse? Velrax managed to ask. The pause that followed was briefer this time, but infinitely heavier. Then, Commander, we'll teach you one more thing about humanity. We don't just learn fast. We improvise even faster. Commander Velrax had faced down rebellions on 7 worlds, survived 3 assassination attempts, and once personally led a boarding action against a fortress station that was supposed to be impregnable. In all those situations, he'd maintained his composure, calculated his options, made the hard calls that command demanded. But this was different. This was watching every assumption, every tactical certainty, every advantage he'd counted on evaporate like water on a reactor core. Charge all weapons, he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos rippling through his neural clusters. Target the nearest human vessels. If they want to fight, we'll give them a fight they'll never forget. Commander, Rendix rumbled, his massive hands hovering uncertainly over his console. The tactical analysis suggests— I know what it suggests, Velrax snapped. I can see the numbers. I can see we're outnumbered 4-1. But numbers aren't everything. We have experience, discipline, proven combat systems. They have, what? 30 years of spaceflight, stolen technology cobbled together from everyone they've met? Borrowed, actually, came Tanaka's voice again, still piped into the bridge. We prefer the term borrowed. Stealing implies we didn't ask. We asked very nicely. Offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, technology sharing programs. Your intelligence files would show that if you'd bothered to read beyond the military assessments. Velrax made a cutting gesture, and Borton muted the channel. I don't need her commentary during battle prep. Sir, Kix called out, his voice cracking slightly. The human fleet is doing something strange. Strange how? Thera demanded, moving to peer over Kix's shoulder at his displays. They're not moving into attack formation. They're just sitting there, waiting. Kix manipulated his controls, zooming in on various clusters of human ships. Power signatures are consistent with standby mode, weapons charged but not locked on. It's like they're giving us time to think. Velrax finished, the realization settling over him like a cold blanket. They meant it. They actually want us to withdraw. It's a trick, Thura insisted, her scales rippling through several colors in rapid succession, a sign of severe agitation in their species. They're overconfident, exposed. If we strike now, strike hard, we can break through their lines. And go where? Velrax interrupted. Look at the display, Thura. Really look. They've positioned themselves in overlapping spheres of coverage. Every escape vector is blocked. Every tactical choke point is covered. Even if we fought our way out, we'd lose 70, maybe 80% of the fleet. He sank back into his command chair, feeling every one of his 63 years pressing down on his carapace. Unmute the human channel. Borton complied, and immediately Tanaka's voice filled the bridge again. Absolutely understand if you need a few minutes to discuss this with your officers. It's a big decision. Career-defining, really. Maybe civilization-defining, depending on how stubborn you're feeling. You're enjoying this, Velrax said, not bothering to hide his bitterness. Honestly? A little bit. Yeah. Tanaka admitted. We've spent the last 6 months wanting your fleet assemble, knowing this confrontation was coming, preparing for it, while pretending we hadn't noticed you. That's a lot of stress, Commander. A lot of sleepless nights. So yes, I'm experiencing a certain satisfaction in having successfully pulled off what my military advisors kept calling the most insane defensive strategy in human history. Despite everything, Velrax felt a twitch of amusement. Your advisors called it insane? Oh, constantly. General Kwame nearly had an aneurysm when I proposed it. Admiral Chen threatened to resign. But here we are, and it worked, so I'm calling it genius in hindsight. Velrax studied the tactical display again, this time not as a warrior looking for weakness, but as a student examining a masterwork. The human positioning was flawless, not just militarily sound, but psychologically devastating. They'd turned his own strategy against him, used his assumptions as weapons, and done it all while maintaining the appearance of helpless prey. You could have revealed your fleet earlier, he said. Scared us off before we committed to the attack. Why wait? Because, Tanaka said, and now her voice carried something harder. Something that made Velrax's combat instincts suddenly scream warnings. We needed to know for certain what you intended. If you'd come in peace, offering trade or cultural exchange, our ships would have stayed hidden. You'd have dealt with our civilian government, never knowing the military option existed. But we came as conquerors. You did. And we needed to know that. Needed to understand exactly what the Zynthari High Command was willing to do. Tanaka paused. Tell me, Commander, did your leadership authorize the extermination protocols for our population centers? The ones your intelligence division prepared last month? Velrax felt his mandibles lock. The extermination protocols were classified at the highest levels, accessible only to the War Council and fleet commanders. How did you— We have very good intelligence services, Tanaka said simply. Turns out when you conquer 17 species, some of them hold grudges. Some of them are willing to share information with anyone who might give you a bloody nose, and some of them are actively hoping you'll finally pick a fight you can't win. Thera was staring at him now, along with most of the bridge crew. Velrax could practically feel their confidence draining away, being replaced by the cold mathematics of their situation. They'd come as conquerors, expecting terrified prey. Instead, they'd found a predator that had been waiting patiently for them to step into the trap. 1 hour, 12 minutes, Borton announced quietly. I'm curious, Tanaka said, her tone shifting to something almost conversational again. What did you think would happen? Long term, I mean. You conquer Earth, add humanity to your growing empire, move on to the next target. Did it ever occur to you that maybe we'd remember, that we'd spend every day planning, preparing, waiting for the moment we could hit back? We have systems for managing conquered populations, Velrax replied automatically, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. Compliance protocols, cultural integration programs, economic interdependence. Yeah, we read about those too, Tanaka interrupted. Very thorough, very well designed. Excellent track record of keeping populations docile and productive. There's just one problem with applying them to humanity, which is, we're really bad at staying conquered, said that other human voice, the younger male. I'm Admiral Rains, by the way. Commander of the actual military part of this operation, while Coordinator Tanaka handles the fun psychological warfare stuff. Admiral, Velrax acknowledged. his translator probably struggling with the resignation in his voice. So here's the thing, Commander Velrax, Rains continued. Every species you've conquered, they were spacefaring before you arrived. They had centuries, sometimes millennia of interstellar culture. They understood their place in the galactic hierarchy. They knew when they were outmatched. And humans don't? We don't even understand the concept, Rains said, and Velrax could hear the grin in his voice. We've been spacefaring for 3 decades. We went from chemical rockets to FTL in 1 human generation. We don't have centuries of learned behavior about how space combat works, or diplomatic protocols, or proper military doctrine. We're making it all up as we go. Thera laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. You're admitting you have no idea what you're doing. I'm saying we're not constrained by knowing what can't be done, Rains corrected. Every tactical manual you've written assumes certain things about how battles work. Every strategy assumes your opponent will behave rationally within established parameters, but we don't know the parameters, which means we don't know we're supposed to stay inside them. Velrax looked at the countdown. 58 minutes. Admiral Rains, he said carefully. If I order my fleet to withdraw, what guarantee do I have that you won't simply follow us and destroy us once we're scattered? You have my word, Tanaka interjected. I know that probably doesn't mean much to you right now, but it's all I can offer. We don't want to fight. Fighting is expensive, destructive, and creates grudges that last generations. We want neighbors, trade partners, maybe even allies eventually, but we will not be subjects. Your word, Velrax repeated. He looked around his bridge at his crew, Zynthari, Krell, Gorath, and others, all watching him, waiting for his decision. The High Command will demand an explanation. They'll want to know why I surrendered without firing a shot. You're not surrendering, Tanaka corrected gently. You're choosing not to commit mutual suicide. There's a difference. Tell them the truth. You were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and outplanned. Tell them humanity isn't the easy conquest they assumed. Tell them we're willing to negotiate, but not from a position of subjugation. Velrax's tactical display showed the human fleet still waiting, still patient. 17,000 ships, all presumably crewed and combat-ready, just sitting there, giving him time, giving him a chance to make the smart choice instead of the proud one. Sub-Commander Thera, he said quietly. Sir, signal the fleet. All ships are to power down weapons and begin withdrawing to Mars orbit. He held up a primary appendage to forestall her protest. That's an order. The bridge fell silent again, but this time it was the silence of acceptance rather than shock. Thera's scales cycled through several colors before settling on a pale blue reluctant acknowledgement. Transmitting orders now, sir, she said. Coordinator Tanaka. Admiral Rains. Velrax said, straightening in his chair despite the weight of defeat. The Zynthari fleet is withdrawing. I accept your offer of negotiations. Wise choice, Commander, Tanaka replied. And just so you know, we're genuinely impindensed. You made it. A lot of people here bet you'd try to fight your way out. You just won me a considerable amount of money. You were betting on whether I'd make a suicidal last stand. Velrax asked incredulously. Oh, constantly. We bet on everything. It's a human thing. Tanaka's voice softened slightly. Seriously though, Commander, this didn't have to be a defeat. Think of it as the beginning of a different kind of relationship. We've got technology we'd be happy to share, resources you might find useful, and we're actually pretty good company once you get past the whole aggressively refusing to be conquered thing. As Velrax watched his fleet begin its withdrawal, ships peeling away in coordinated formations, he found himself considering the bizarre trajectory that had led him here. He'd come to conquer a primitive species, to add another jewel to the Zynthari crown. Instead, he'd been outthought, outmaneuvered, and frankly humiliated by a species that had barely left their home system when he'd begun his military career. One question, he said. Those 17,000 ships, were they all fully operational? Or was some of that elaborate bluffing? There was a pause, and then Tanaka laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. You know what, Commander? I think I'll let you wonder about that. keeps things interesting for next time. Next time? Well, assuming the High Command decides to try again in a few years. Fair warning though, we'll have at least double this number by then. We're enthusiastic builders. Velrax's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or might have been despair. I'll include that in my report. You do that. Oh, and Commander? Tell your superiors something for me. What's that? Humanity says hello, Tanaka said, her voice carrying across the void between their ships, between their civilizations. We're here, we're not going anywhere, and we're very much interested in being good neighbors. But anyone who mistakes neighborliness for weakness is going to have a very bad day. Message received, Velrax said. And Coordinator Tanaka. For what it's worth, that was the most impressive tactical performance I've witnessed in my entire career. Why, Commander? Tanaka replied, warmth and humor mixing in her voice. That's the nicest thing anyone's threatened to kill me with has ever said. I'll treasure it always. As the channel closed and the last of his ships moved into withdrawal formation, Velrax allowed himself a moment of reflection. He'd lost, yes, but he'd lost to an opponent who'd given him every chance to walk away, who'd turned warfare into negotiation, who'd somehow made defeat feel less like humiliation and more like education. The humans, he realized, weren't just dangerous because of their ships or their tactics or their rapid technological advancement. They were dangerous because they genuinely believed that yesterday's enemy could become tomorrow's friend, and they fought just hard enough to prove you couldn't conquer them. But not so hard that reconciliation became impossible. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And somewhere, in a part of himself he'd rarely acknowledged during decades of military service, Velrax felt something unexpected stirring. Respect. Helm, he ordered, set course for the designated withdrawal point. And someone get me a secure channel to High Command. They're going to want to hear about this immediately. Behind him, the blue marble of Earth hung in the view screen, deceptively peaceful, now protected by a fleet that hadn't existed publicly until minutes ago. Velrax suspected that world would be causing ripples throughout the galaxy for decades to come. Humanity had ended the war in minutes, not through overwhelming force, but through overwhelming preparation coupled with the tactical patience to wait for exactly the right moment to reveal it. They'd turned his 2-hour ultimatum into their victory condition. The truly scary part, Velrax had a feeling they'd done it while genuinely hoping he'd make the smart Morse. That, more than anything else, told him everything he needed to know about humanity's place in the galaxy. They weren't conquerors, they were survivors who'd learned to fight smart instead of hard, and who somehow maintained their optimism about peaceful coexistence even while holding a gun to your head. The Zynthari High Command was going to hate his report. But they'd better listen to it. Because the galaxy had just shifted, and the species everyone had dismissed as primitive newcomers had just announced quite firmly that they were nobody's subjects. Velrax smiled, a gesture that didn't translate well to most species, but felt appropriate nonetheless. Defeat had never been quite so educational, or, he suspected, quite so preventable for everyone involved. Humanity had just taught the Zynthari Empire its first lesson in humility. He wondered what the second lesson would be, and fervently hoped he wouldn't be around to experience it.